point of contact with a particular client. So throughout this course, we will be exposed to various principles and ethics, as well as the core values that anchors the social work profession. According to International Federation of Social Workers and the International Association of Social Work, School of social work profession facilitates or drives social change and development. It also leads to the empowerment and liberation of people. So the principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibilities, respect for diversity, cultural diversities are all central, key to social work. So on this defines what social work profession is all about, right? And social work profession is underpinned by theories from both social work, social sciences, humanities, and indigenous knowledge. We use these theories to engage people and structures to address life challenges and enhance well-being, thereby giving answers to the husband question, how can the society be possible? This is where social work goes beyond some of the profession or disciplines that shares similar interests, such as sociology, such as psychology and economics. So after identifying patterns, social work goes beyond identifying patterns or identifying a social problem or justifying why a problem should be considered to be a social problem to profiling solutions to these problems. We try to identify problems and also provide solutions, working with people to identify their adjustmental issues and helping them to make the necessary adjustments to fit into the current situation and move on with life, not just by compulsion or by necessity, but alongside with a heart full of joy and happiness, even with their worst conditions. So social work is a profession that is governed by professional ethics and accountability. So it is referred to the ethical and legal responsibility that the social work have to ensure they adhere. As social workers, you need to adhere to these principles, these professional standards and guidelines while carrying out your profession, your practice. So it is not an engagement or a profession that is driven by one's emotion. So at every point in time, you need to keep your emotion in check. Mind you, you're dealing with humans. You're dealing with people that at some point, what they go through would also have a way of influencing you. You're not immune to the problems your clients or your service users are experiencing. And as such, there is need for these professional standards to be followed to avoid a situation where you will be, let's say, trapped in their situation. And in social work, that is what we refer to as vicarious trauma, or what oftentimes we refer to as post-traumatic stress that can come alongside as a result of your job description. So there's need for this accountability, there's need for legal responsibility, there's need to adhere to the professional standards. So having justified the fact that there is need for social work professional standard or social work ethical code and accountability, let us now identify what the profession is and how the social work profession qualifies to be a profession. First, a profession is a vocation requiring advanced education and training. You might wonder, all other disciplines at some point requires advanced training too. So what makes social work different from other disciplines that are not considered to be a profession? Yes, of course, you're here because you need that advanced training. You need to be licensed to enable you practice. That justifies the fact that social work is a profession. So the the education, the exposure you had within the four walls of classroom is not enough for you to be licensed as a professional social worker. While that is enough to give you that qualification, but for you to be licensed, you require an advanced education and training. And this training will not just stop at this level. To some of our dear friends who have been privileged to practice in various climes, you agree with me that at every point of your engagement or practice, there's need for you to acquire a license. That is to tell you that the social work profession is governed by a certain standards, and that makes it a profession, right? Now, a profession is a job that requires specific training. I said earlier that the social work practice base is very broad, right? In fact, social work practice is as broad as the globe entirely, because there's no aspect of human endeavor that you cannot see social work practice, or you cannot see an area, an aspect of social work practice. Are you talking about engineering firm? Is it in a tech firm? Is it in an agricultural firm? Wherever you find yourself, there is always a space for social work. So that makes the profession to require specific training that is regulated by some certain standards. So social work profession is not something you just go and say, okay, I'm a social worker. Fine. In the end, you'll be considered to be a social worker, but a social worker in a particular field. And that was why yesterday, during the course of our orientation, someone was telling me that he is a social worker. And I think he made mention of the aspect of social work he is into, which is child, if I'm not mistaken, child social work and the rest. So what makes a profession is that it requires specific training and it is regulated by certain standards. Yes, the fact that the social work has a standard that professionals are expected to follow through makes it a profession. And according to SWPCE, it defines a profession as a group pursuing a learned act as a common calling in the spirit of public service. So in the end, we notice that the social work profession is geared toward addressing societal ills, social problems, ensuring that the society is conducive for everybody. That's, in the light of SWPCE, justify the social work as a profession. Now, having justified the discipline as a profession, let us now understand or justify who professionals are. We are done talking about the social work as a profession. Let us now understand what qualifies those who practice the profession as professionals. One of the things that qualifies a professional is the fact that they have an expert power. You are an expert, or you're a professional because you are an expert. So you begin to ask yourself, what makes you an expert? And that is why you need to identify or carve a niche for yourself. You need to identify an area of specialty to become an expert in that area. So it's not just enough for you to say, I'm a social worker. You're a social worker in what field? That makes you an expert in that. So for you to justify the fact that you're a social worker, you're a professional, you need to up your game to ensure you're an expert. And what makes you an expert? The fact that you're a professional, you're a master in a particular area of specialty makes you an expert. So you should begin to see yourself, if you begin to see yourself as a professional, you know what it means. It's not just by words of mouth. You must live it, you must show it, you must practice it. Your ability to harmonize knowledge and wisdom makes you a professional. So it's not just to say, okay, fine, I am a social worker. Yes. You can be a graduate of social work, but do you have that expert power? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the ability to harmonize knowledge and wisdom? That is why, as a social worker or in practice, as a social work student, you must engage in field work because the social work profession is practice-based, and engaging you in field work alongside the theoretical aspect, your theoretical exposure will enable you harmonize knowledge and wisdom because the field work affords you the ample opportunity to see firsthand how the principles of social work are being applied, helping you to see firsthand the practical aspect of the social work profession, exposing you to the rudiments or equipping you with the ability to see how to apply knowledge or how to translate knowledge to wisdom, or how knowledge can be translated to wisdom by virtue of your engagement, by virtue of your intervention. Going further, your you becoming or being a professional can be traced through your ability to demonstrate your responsible use of power. Yes, you need to be responsible when it comes to your use of power. Remember, we talked about one of the things that makes you a professional is the fact that you're an expert. Now, being an expert automatically gives you some power, some level of power. Having knowledge and wisdom also gives you some power, really. Hello, can I be heard? Please say hi if you
Hello, I
can
can
hear
hear
me.
you, sir.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Okay, all right. Taiwo, I can see your message. We can't hear you, sir. Sorry, I think my network fluctuated. That's why. I'm back now. So we believing you can all hear me now. I was saying that as one of the qualities or one of the qualities that makes you or that qualifies you to become a professional is the fact that you are an expert, right? And being an expert gives you some level of power, right? And you having knowledge and wisdom in practice also gives you additional power. So, what qualifies you to becoming a professional is your ability to use this power responsibly. Because people that comes to you, the kind of clients you serve, oftentimes are clients that uh, has this low self-worth, self-esteem, right? Their sense of self-worth has been shattered. They believe they have nothing they can do, they are powerless and they are hopeless and worthless. So you see yourself oftentimes trying to resolve problems among vulnerable people. So if you're not careful, you will see yourself taking advantage, undue advantage of the people you're supposed to help to come out of their problems. People you're supposed to help them come back to their mainstream of social functioning. If you're not making good use of the power you have as a professional, you might end up taking advantage of them. So you being a professional can be traced through your ability to make good use, judicious use of the professional power, your expert power. Yes, professionals too are also traced or marked by their correctness. Your ability to make good use of intervention strategies, your ability to make use of principles and follow through the code of conduct that govern the professions makes you a professional. You cannot say you're a professional when you're practicing based on your inclination, no matter how long you've practiced as a social worker. It's not enough to say, okay, fine, I've been a social worker for the past 10 years, I've been practicing in various countries, and yet, going through your practice, it is not, we can notice that, or we can see, and it's evident that you're practicing based on your emotions. I'll give us an example. I have this experience of a student, one of my students that was sent to a field work. And one of these days, she happens to be a lady. On her way to work, she noticed an abandoned baby. She saw people gathering somewhere close to a refuse bin. And when she approached the crowd, she noticed they were uh, amazed at an abandoned baby. Someone abandoned a newborn baby just by the side of the refuse. And guess what she did? She immediately carried that baby to her house. Now, while the motive was actually not wrong, not bad, but that was so unprofessional. So the fact that your intention was to go and take care of the baby, there are rules of engagement, there are principles, there are guidelines to follow when it comes to things like this. Social work practice or social work as a profession do not function in a vacuum. There are some ingredients that beautifies the social work practice, that makes it beautiful, that makes it interesting, that makes it flourish. And if you take out these things, social work becomes empty, becomes naked and ugly. And one of these things that makes social work beautiful is the laws of the land. One of the things that makes social work beautiful are in Nigeria. You've been practicing for so many years. I hear a lot of my students telling me that, just sometimes in a bid to project themselves, to make it look like, as a social worker, you need to be hungry for knowledge. No matter how you know, it's not always enough, because you will still be presented, you will still be new issues. The society is dynamic. You still be faced with issues that are foreign to you because the society is dynamic. Today we are talking about same-sex marriage as something that is repugnant to our culture. But you need to be open to the fact that the society is dynamic. Tomorrow, the same culture will be embracing same-sex marriage. Yes, I can tell you for free. So as social workers, we should be open to learning new things. And that is when that is how you challenge what you know and give room to learning new things, which will now put you in a better position to justify the fact that you're professional, and that can be traced to how correct your practice will be. Because by the time you're open to learning new things, you will practice with correctness based on contemporary or things that are current. Yes. Another thing that marks professionalism is the fact that your ability to practice or deliver aptitude for professional results and culture of performance, development, and reform. And finally, on what marks professionals is your ability to network. You see, knowledge is power. And you should also agree that no matter how good you are, others are also good in their own ways. Identifying abilities or capacities in people and linking them to resource system, or identifying problems in people and linking them to resource system where they can get help is key to social work. And that is why, in a bid to develop and improve this aspect of you, there is a course where we are going to arrange you guys in group so that you can work as a team to present a paper that, if possible, can be published. So player or team spirit in social work is key. So how well do you thrive working with people? Do you identify capacities? Do you identify good qualities in people? Of course, if you cannot see the good in people, how can you see the good in your clients? How can you even identify when your clients are making progress and help them to leverage on that progress, the little progress they are making? Because in social work, there's what we refer to as strength-based perspective, where we identify client strengths, leverage on those strengths as a low-hanging fruit to help our client to come back to their mainstream of social functioning. Most of these clients' problem is because they feel they have no powers, they have limited abilities to help themselves stand. But helping a client to identify their strength in itself is therapeutic. So as a professional, you can justify the fact that you're an expert and you're a professional by your abilities to network. Because this would also up your game when it comes to referrals, making referrals to appropriate agencies. And this is when your ability or your qualification will be tested, and your experience in the field would also be tested. I remember yesterday, my colleague that was talking about your fieldwork made mention of an aspect of your fieldwork that has to do with KINEP, that is Know Your Neighborhood and Exposure Program, where you'll be assisted, or that exposure will help you to understand and identify social work agencies within your environment. Now, the beautiful part of this is being abreast of agencies around you will put you in a position to make quick referrals whenever the opportunity presents itself. One of the principles of social work is acceptance. Yes, you have no reason to reject clients, whether the client's problems falls within your area of specialty or not. All you're expected to do first is to accept that client. After accepting that client, you now know where to refer that client to for help. So, but then, how would you know where to refer a particular client to when you're not even aware of agencies around you? And that is why I say, at every given time, social workers are expected to learn. And that is why the social work is a profession. And those who practice social work are considered to be professionals because we are open to learning. So let's assume you're in Lagos. You've been practicing social work for a very long time. You've always been in the field. And there's need for you to relocate to Abuja. Yes, for you to settle down, you also need to do field work. Why am I saying this? Some persons yesterday were struggling during their orientation. Some were saying, CEO, do I need to do field work? It's just like I don't know if it's due to the financial engagement or you're trying to cut down on the stress. But let me tell us, whether for this purpose or not, even in practice, if you're moving from one place to another, there's need for you to do field work. Like, for example, you've been in Lagos for a while and you're going to Abuja to settle. There's need for you to engage in what we refer to as Know Your Neighborhood Exposure Program. This will not be set by any other person. It could be set by the agency you're working with, but as a professional, you also need to do it for yourself. Because as an expectation in the practice, you're expected to be competent in practice. You should never be caught on fresh. There should never be a situation where a client comes to you and you're beginning to look for, struggle to identify a particular agency that would address a client's problem. That would be exposing a gap in you. Because if you are aware of agencies around, then immediately a client comes to you and you understand the client's problem, you know that, okay, fine, this client needs a family social worker, or this client needs a counselor, or this client needs to be taken to a psychiatric hospital, or this client needs to be taken to a Nigerian drug law enforcement shelter. This client needs to be taken to, you should know. And that makes you a professional because of your ability to network, because of your network capacity. So we've been able to establish a lot of things this morning. First, we've been able to understand what social work is and the place of social work in the society. We've also we've been able to expose ourselves to what a profession is and how social work qualifies to be a profession, and why those who practice social work can be considered to be professionals. What makes them professionals? So that is where we are. But before we proceed, I would like to entertain some questions. Please feel free to ask questions. Sorry, I will make arrangements for these materials to be sent on the platform. I think it's a slide. I'm going to package it and forward to you guys. Just remind me much later, okay? So that you can always prepare ahead of class. Please, I'm open to questions. Entertain us with your questions, please. If you ask questions, it will help us address a lot of issues. Yes, I can see the hand of Daoud. Please unmute and speak.
Right. Good morning again. Thank you for your time with us. I just want to ask, when you said you should never reject a client, what if you have clash of interest with dealing with that client, even before you do referral at all? What should we do?
What if you have clash of interest? Let me understand what you mean by clash of interest, please, in line with your question.
Okay, what I mean is this. I don't want to reject this person, but perhaps maybe we have had relationship before, family relationship that was bad, or something that happened in the past, and somehow, this person is coming to me as a service, needs my service. That's going to clash on my interest for the person. So my question is, what should I do at that at such points?
Okay, thank you very much for that beautiful. You say why I encourage questions, right? It will afford us with ample opportunities to make further clarification that will drive home the point, right? You see, social work is not an art. It's not just an art. Social work is scientific. Let me tell us something. Even though you've been practicing for 10 years, for 20 years, and you have an engagement with a particular client 20 years ago, that engagement with that client is still subject to review, because every engagement is being recorded. You're expected to record it, right? So if at any point in time the client believes that, okay, fine, there was a malpractice, there was something you did that you're not supposed to do, and the client is trying to bring it up, you will be invited for questioning. And if at any point those investigating the case happen to notice that, okay, at some point you were biased, you would give a clear explanation, you will answer. And if at some point they discover that, okay, fine, you engage in a criminal act, you face jail time. You'll be liable to a competent court of jurisdiction. That is why you need to practice intelligently. That is why you need to practice in line with the established standards of the profession. Now, let me address your question proper. Your client comes to you. We all have our biases, whether you like it or not. As humans, we have our biases, but our biases we need to keep our biases in check to avoid roping ourselves in problems in the nearest future. Now, your client comes to you, and because of your encounter with that client in the past, you begin to say, okay, fine, I don't want to get involved in this case. That is you being biased. So what do you now justify to say, okay, fine, you're rejecting this client? The client can even say, okay, fine, because of my this social worker is not qualified to be a social worker. The client can even begin to apply for your license to be withdrawn. Oh, is it because we had issues last year? That is why you don't want to address my problem? Now, I am not saying you must handle it. But first, you must accept the client.
First.
You must accept the client first, and then refer that client to another social worker or another agency. So at that point of presenting the client, or maybe the client approaching you, there's no way you can say, please, I don't want to get involved. No, that is you rejecting the client. And you're exposing yourself to problem. You smile as if nothing happened, accept the client, document the client issue, and refer the client. There's no problems with making referrals. And you can even use your problem or your encounter with the clients in the past to justify the reason why you referred that client. Now, okay, fine. I believe that at some point there will be some kind of conflict of interest. I've been emotionally attached, or had one or two engagements in the past. And for that reason, I believe it will influence the intervention process. And that is why there is need for me to refer this client. So you've justified your reason. I hope that addresses your question. Hello? Hello? Who asked that question? I hope that addresses your question, right?
I did. Thank you so much for your answer to my question. Yes, quite a lot. You answered it. I was just wondering that where is my own? At what point is the limit that I can express? Okay. I can express what I don't think I want to do, so that it will not impact on my practice. You understand? Do you get me?
Oh, that's true. You're right. The thing is, you see, the ethical code of the profession is not just to protect the clients. The standard is also to protect the professionals. So as we proceed, you will come to see how these principles are carefully crafted to protect not just the clients, but the professionals and even the profession itself. Now, you at some point you will come to see where these principles are drafted, how it's carefully arranged to protect the clients, to protect the professional, to protect the profession, and also to protect your colleagues in practice. So going forward, in the absence of any further question, we will now be looking at professional ethics. Let us understand what professional ethics is all about before we even begin to identify the principles of and the ethics of the social work profession. Now, a professional ethics or a profession, like we said earlier, is founded on a specialized high education, now training, and the purpose for which is to supply counsel and services to others. So professional ethics is all about incorporating personal and corporate standards of behavior that is expected of an individual or a professional. Now you see that these professional or corporate standards is kind of abstract. On its own, it cannot function. It needs a human, an entity to lift it and apply it in the course of practice. Please, Solomon Mbam, kindly mute your mic. It's distracting us. Thank you. So, incorporating personal and corporate standards of behavior that is expected of that is what is referred to as professional ethics. Because the fact that you're a social worker, before becoming a social worker, you are a human being first. And I believe that is from the angle, the last participant that asked that question, that question was born out of the fact that, okay, fine, I am a human being. I have my own concern. At what point can I project my own concern in a way that is not going to hurt a professional relationship? Yes, agreed. As a social worker, before becoming a social worker, you're a human being. So professionalism can be displayed or can be demonstrated in through your ability to practice in a way your personal biases do not overshadow the purpose of your engagements with clients. The reason why you know, can I be heard, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So your ability to practice in a way that your personal biases do not overshadow your reason for your engagement with a particular client is what makes you a professional. And that is you being professional. And that is you following the ethical code of the profession. Because we all have our biases. We all have our concern. And granted, there's what we refer to as practice wisdom, a situation whereby as a social worker, you leverage on your years of experience in practice to render services to a client. But also know that humans, the kind of clients we serve are humans. And the human nature is that we are in a state of constant flux based on our circumstances in life. Today you meet a happy man, and tomorrow that same man is not, or the next minute that same man that used to be happy is no longer happy. There are so many reasons. Probably mood swings, probably life challenges, probably something just happened to a family member. He just lost a family member. You don't expect that same energy, right? So all these can impact on the professional engagement or professional relationship. And as social workers, you need to leverage on the existing ethical code to enable you function properly. Now, professional ethics is concerned with one's behavior and conduct when carrying out a professional work. Now, and these professional ethics are codified and varies across different cultures. So while ethics are not cast on stones, it gives room, just like Thomas Aquinas would say, laws are, can only be considered to be laws if they have human face. Or if a principle does not put on a human face, then it cannot be considered to be a law. It can be challenged. It can be tested. And once it is being tested against the principle of the fact that the law is supposed to be to put on human face, it won't thrive. So professional ethics are concerned with one's behavior and conduct when carrying out a professional work. We are yet to begin to identify social work professional ethics. But what we are doing now, we are now trying to help us to understand what should be considered to be a professional ethics. So that by the time you begin to identify this professional ethics, you will see the justification why this is considered to be an ethics. Right. So a professional ethics is concerned about with one's behavior and one's conduct in the process of carrying out is professional work, and it is codified and it varies across various cultures. Professional ethics and ethical norms, values and principles that guides profession and the ethics of decision making within a profession. So in all, we will say that professional ethics are ethical norms, values, principles that guide a profession. So under the umbrella of the professional ethics in social work, we have the ethical code of standard in social work. We have the principles of social work. We also have the core values of social work. All these put together are what we refer to as the professional ethics of Caroline. Kindly mute your mic, please. Thank you. Or you wanted saying something?
No, sir.
Okay, please mute your mic. Now, professional ethics comes with consequences based on ethics, outcomes, ideals based on ethics, character, principles, based on rules, codes, and standards. So what this entails is, or what this means is that professional ethics also spell out the consequences that comes with the professional not following the ethical codes of practice. Right? Now, let us now look at the principles as well as the components of ethics. There are various principles and components of ethics. One of the principles is the utility principle. Utility principles generally has to do with how to use a particular service. So the fact that you are a social worker and you have this professional relationship with the client does not mean the client is at your mercy. There are principles that has to do with utility. How do you make good use of the available methods and intervention? This enables the profession and professionals to avoid crossing the line. Let's say, for example, the fact that you have engagement with your client and your client is expected to open up to you as a professional, you're expected to make judicious use of the information given to you. And one of the utility principle in this situation is the principle of confidentiality. How do you make use of the information given to you by your client? You're not expected to share it with the third party, but there are exceptions to those rules anyway. And as we proceed, we'll come to know those exceptions. But we are talking about the utility principle. How do you make use of this information? You're expected to protect it jealously, not just by saying, okay, fine, I'm not going to tell anyone about whatever this client exposed to me. But how do you protect the client's information so that someone else will not stumble over on it? Okay, sometimes you'll decide to take a client's file home to work because it's necessary to do so. When you take the client's files home to work on, do you keep it where your children or even your spouse can have access to it? Remember, you're a professional. You're a professional social worker. Your client is your spouse or your children or your relatives are not. So the way you protect that information or the duty of care bestowed on you is not extended to them. They don't have such privilege and they don't have such restrictions. So they might not see reasons or any need to protect such information the same way you would want to. We also have the rights principle. Yes, the fact that people go through a lot or people need help does not mean you're in a position to make decisions that will affect their life. people still have the right to make decisions that will affect their rights. So going by this principle entails that you allow people to make decisions for themselves. In the course of your professional relationship with clients, there should be a democratization of decision making, a situation where clients are expected to make decisions for themselves. All you need to do is to allow them, guide them through to ensure they make the best and settle for the best decision. Now, you might think, oh, why is this person, why should we allow this person to make decisions for himself when he's not okay? Mind you, sometimes the reason why these people even come to you is because they feel they lack the power to make decisions for themselves. And if you help them see that they still have those powers, they still have those strengths, automatically you are addressing an underlying issue that will help them to come back to their footing without needing the support of a social worker. And that is where the social work comes in. And that is where we smile that yes, as a professional, you're doing your job. A situation where clients can now go on with their normal life without needing the assistance of a therapist. That is the goal of a social work, of the social work profession, to create an enabling environment, a possible one. So people should be allowed to make decisions for themselves. The right of people should be recognized. And that means while practicing, you should always weigh your engagements in the scale of human rights. This thing I'm doing, is it going to protect the rights of my clients? Or is it going to hinder them from having their rights? Like we said earlier, the example I cited earlier, that girl or that student that went as far as carrying that baby, taking that baby to her house, the motive was actually right, but the action, the way and manner in which she carried it out was totally wrong. In fact, it is criminal. She can even serve jail term. So as a social worker, you should come to terms with the fact that your motives is not enough. Your motive for a particular action is not always enough. There must be a legal basis. There must be a cultural basis for carrying out a particular act or settling for a particular decision. And that is based on the rights principle. That takes us to fairness principle. Even when you're right, or even when you know you're supposed to do the right thing, there's principle of fairness, which has to do with neutrality and impartiality. I made mention of something earlier. Always know that at every given time, your engagement with a particular client can always be challenged. We have a case in the United States, a situation where a young girl that was between the ages of 5 to 7 years was molested. She was abused. Her parents stepped in, the social worker was invited, and the social worker tried to address the issue amicably. But then he tried to handle it at his level without opening the doors for the law enforcement agencies to take part, to be involved in the process. And that child felt, at some point, the child felt like the process of her getting justice was truncated, although she did not act. But guess what? She kept it until she was 18 and she acted on it. And let me shock you, the social worker involved was arrested. Even her parents were also called for questioning and were fined. It became a situation of accomplice because they were now considered to be accessories before the fact or the act. So you see how dicey the situation is. So that young child, at some point, when she became an adult, she felt like, okay, fine, the social worker did not allow the law enforcement agencies to take part in the process, even though it was considered to be a criminal matter. And now, in the social worker's explanation, he was like, okay, fine. The person involved was a family member. And since the parents were ready to forgive, he now decided to say, okay, fine, this matter should be handled at the level of the family. And his own justification was that, okay, fine, handling it at this level will also go further to protect the privacy of this child. But then, before the law, that action was totally wrong. Now, why am I saying this? In line with the social worker's motive, he was 100% right. But then, like I said earlier, taking social work out of the law, or taking the law out of social work, taking culture out of social work, makes social work naked and ugly. What makes social work beautiful and interesting is the fact that it is anchored by laws, principles, cultures of the people surrounding it. So you need to be conscious of this fact at every point of your engagement. Do not try to conceal, for example, if there's a case involving, will I say, child molestation or stealing, please, as far as you're willing and ready as a professional to mediate, make sure the presence of a law enforcement agency is being brought in. And if it's the decision of the parties not to involve the law enforcement agency, please ensure it is put to writing. It is what we refer in social work as consent. Get the consent of the parties involved. That, okay, fine, you see this matter, I don't want police. I don't want any government officials to be involved. Make sure you put it in writing. And this was where that social worker got it wrong. So imagine he was able to get the parents to put it in writing, and also to get, because at that point the child could not even make a decision for herself. So if the parents could decide to sign that consent form, that would have saved that social worker from that malpractice suit years later. So we need to be intelligent in practice. We need to be smart in practice at every given time. Because if you make a decision and later on it is noted that it is not, it comes to the notice of those that are saddled with the responsibility of reviewing your case, in case someone is trying to challenge your professional engagement, and it becomes clear that you were partial, or you were not neutral. The question will now be, why were you trying to favor a particular party over the other? Why did you decide, or why did you settle for the available options? There must be some reasons, justifiable reasons, why you settle for a particular option against another. And as we proceed, we'll come to understand this. It is what is referred to as dilemma, ethical dilemma in social work. That will now take us to the next principles, which is the social justice principle, equity. You see, as social workers, we have a lot of powers. You see, sometimes people that are your clients are people that are very powerful in the society. Please, Solomon Mbam, kindly mute your mic. If you log out and if the network takes you off and you come back, just remember to mute your mic, please. Okay, I can see the hand of Daudu. You want to say something? Thank you, Solomon Mbam.
Yeah, yes, I just have a question, please. I'm sorry. You were saying that
No problem.
you were saying that we should always allow the client to make their own decisions, support them in making decisions. At a point when there's no capacity to make decisions, maybe for mental health, maybe for something so serious, how do we do?
Fine. You see, that is why we say that if you take the law out of social work becomes naked.
Yes.
There are laws governing situations like this. For example, if you meet a street child, ideally, a child is not supposed to make consent or make decisions for him or herself, right? The guardian or the parents are expected to make decisions for the child. So if you're to engage with a child or you're trying to address a child's issue at home, the child's parents would be comes to taking consent. The parents will take consent on behalf of the child. But this child is on the street, no parents, and the child cannot make consent. There are laws, Child Right Acts. So by first of all, involving the law enforcement agency, automatically you've introduced a legal aspect of it. An entity can now stand in to take consent for that child. So involving a law enforcement agency or a particular NGO will now automatically present or maybe create an opportunity for that child to be represented. So that means that agency will now be speaking for that child. There will now be a legal backing for that agency's engagement. So even though you're working for that particular agency, you won't be taking consent for that child or making decision for that child as an individual. You'll be making consent or you'll be making decision for that child with the name of that agency, because that is what the law recognizes. Now, let's shift to a medical setting. Let's say an adult, and you're in a medical setting. This client is unconscious and cannot take decisions for himself. We have his significant others. For example, his family relatives. Is he married? His wife or his wife or her husband can take a decision, can be there to make a decision. Other relatives, you can have as well leverage on the person's religion, his religious, will I say, his brothers and sisters. Is he a Muslim? Is he a Christian? Or does he belong to any social club or organization? All these can be leveraged upon. The point is, you are trying to avoid a situation where you're becoming a judge over your own matter. You want to assist someone, and at the same time, you're deciding for that person. Automatically, you're sending a message that it is possible that at some point you were biased. You took a particular decision, or you settled for a particular decision because you feel it will be best for you. Try to remove that aspect of deciding for your clients. All you need to do is to help, even when you're bringing in someone, or even when you are assisting your client to make a decision, you help them see through multiple options, the positive and the negative side of these multiple options, and help them settle for one without necessarily telling them, okay, please do this thing. We have experiences as to why it is good to not decide for clients. There is this social worker who, because of her experience, her past, she had a family dysfunction. In fact, she broke up with her husband. And she happened to work with a particular client who is having challenges with the husband. And out of her emotions, emotionally, she started telling the client, this is how my husband started before I left him. If I were in your shoe, I would just file for a divorce. This client did exactly what, because they believe so much in you as a social worker. They see you as their model. And anything you tell them, they act on it. Now, the surprising thing or the shocking thing is, years later, this same lady started accusing the social worker that you asked me to divorce my husband. That means she wasn't really prepared to divorce the husband. And even though she was prepared, she's now frustrated, and she's now looking for the closest person to pour her anger or her frustration on. And if you're not careful, you will be the closest person to take it up. And because there were no consent form signed by the client, it's okay, fine. The decision to divorce my husband was taken by me. I'm the one deciding it. I was not forced to do that. The social worker was invited for questioning. So we need to understand all of this and avoid the situation where you jump making a decision for a client. It will save you a whole lot. And even if a client is taking a serious decision, there are some decisions that verbal consent is not enough. Please make sure you have a written consent signed by the client and well documented in the client's file. I hope that addresses the question of Mr. Dawood.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. We will now be looking at the principle of social justice, ethical principle of social justice. You see, as we proceed, you will come to understand that one of the core values of social work is justice. So the fact that you're trying to solve a problem, your solution to that problem, will it promote social justice? That's the question you should be asking yourself. If not, your solution will now be like cancer. You see, cancer cells oftentimes is not something foreign. It is something that develops inside the body and is eating the body, your organs, your system. So the social work profession is designed in a way that is supposed to address a problem and not introduce another problem. It's just like the definition of sustainable development goals. You say you're interested in the future. Are you developing today in a way that would expose the future to danger? Okay, you want to enjoy today and tomorrow you'll be in bondage? No. Develop today in a way that tomorrow you will still be enjoying. So you're trying to address a particular client's problem. Will addressing a particular client's problem expose millions of other clients to danger? That is not social justice. That is why we say, and I will always repeat, social work engagement is not driven by emotions. It's driven by reason. It is scientific. So because one person is suffering, you want to make sure that you want to resolve that client's problem and expose hundreds and thousands of people to problems? No, that is not social justice. So social justice, or the principle of social justice, entails equity, entails balance. The principle of competence. Yes, as an ethics in the profession, you're expected to be competent in practice. There are things you do, even in your dressing and grooming, that shows you're not competent. People begin to question your character. That shows you're not competent. So you must be able to demonstrate competence in your correctness, in how efficient and effective you are in practice, and your ability to engage in what we refer to as cultural humility and cultural competence. We also have the efficiency principle. You have the ability to resolve problems, but how long does it take you to resolve a particular problem? There are a lot of things to do in social work. But for the past 1 month, 2 years, 3 years, you're still trying to address a particular client's issue. And if they ask you, you will keep saying, the problem, this client is too stubborn. In social work, we take responsibilities. We don't cast blames. Even if a client is difficult, we don't make it look like, okay, the client is the reason why the problem is still presenting itself. We rather take responsibility and say, okay, fine, I'm using a wrong approach. That would now inform the need to adjust to a different methods that might likely give you results. Or if you feel you're not handling it, but you're not a better person to handle it, why not refer it to someone else? There's no room for ego in practice. The fact that you're a social worker and you're qualified, we don't measure our competence by how many cases you handle in a day. We measure our competence in our ability to network, in our ability to resolve clients' problem as a team, not as an individual. Social work do not thrive in empty space, in an empty space. Social work thrive when we have a collective group of professionals specialized in different areas, working together to resolve a client's problem, and in the end, the client comes out happily. The praise and the joy do not go to a particular or individual social worker, it goes to the profession. Accountability principle too is also an important aspect of social work practice and a component of social work ethics, because there is need for you to practice in a way that holds you or makes you accountable to the people you're practicing or you're assisting, you're working with. If the trust is not there, people find it difficult to work with you, and people find it difficult to work with the profession. And let me settle here a bit, because as social workers in equity, we have a responsibility to uphold the image of the profession. You see, it's just like, with all due respect to the Nigerian police force, oftentimes we will hear people say, Nigerian police, you cannot get justice there. That is because of the image the officers of the Nigerian police force have succeeded in creating for that agency. And as a principle in social work, or as an ethical standard in social work, each and every professional, each professional is expected to uphold the ethics and the image of the profession, so that in the public domain, the profession would be respected. And once a matter is being addressed by social workers or the social work profession, the public would have confidence in the fact that, okay, fine, if social workers are involved, then this matter is going to be addressed. It's just like in the Western world. You agree with me? To some of you who are there, you see, there is this calmness that comes in whenever social workers are invited to resolve a particular problem, because of the kind of image the professionals there have succeeded in creating in the mind of the public. And this lies in every social worker. It's a responsibility for every social worker to uphold. So if as an individual professional, you're practicing in a way that makes the profession not to be accountable, then you're exposing yourself for malpractice to a situation where your license can be withdrawn. So you want to practice in a way that upholds the profession, the profession's image. And that will mean you practicing in a transparent manner, you practicing in a respectful way, and you practicing in a way that demonstrate the fact that you're obedient to the law. Because you're a social worker does not mean you are above the law. Things we can manage. We have relative power. We have a lot of power to control. For example, you happen to be in a correctional center or what we used to consider or refer to as prisons or jails. Let's say you're a social worker in a prison, and a judge from a particular an inmate to, let's say, 10 years in prison. You have the rights, the ability, as a social worker who knows the technicalities involved, you can change that judgment. Yes, you can influence it. were hidden to this court, I want to bring it to this court, that some things were not laid bare. Some things were not laid bare to this court. You can even appeal to the judge. You say, okay, please, this person, so and so, is not stable. This person needs to leave. So that is the kind of powers we have. But that does not mean we should use it to our own selfish gain, not to be obedient to the law. So if you begin to take advantage of the power, the relative powers you have for your selfish interests, that is you going against the principles of obedience to the law. So you see that why we are talking about principles and not law is because law sometimes can be very direct, but principles are reasons behind those laws. So to the eye of the law, or in the eye of the law, you might not necessarily be doing anything wrong. You're wrong. For example, if you're trying to help someone who has been sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, you're trying to help the person to be released from prison. What's the reason for that action? Is it justified? Are you cooking up evidence just to save the person because you've been paid? Or are you doing it based on justice and fairness, equity? That is the matter that will be left for your to your conscience and for the principles of obedience to the law to address. That will now take us to the meaning of code of ethics. We've been able to explain the principles of ethics. Let us now look at the meaning of the code of ethics. A code of ethics refers to a statement that expresses the primary ethical values, obligations, and goals of a profession. So what makes up code of ethics refers to that statement that expresses the ethical values of a particular profession. And like I said earlier, the ethics or these statements in themselves are abstract, are not active. It requires a social worker, it requires a professional to activate it. And it's being activated through the actions, directly or indirectly, of the professional. How the professional tries so hard to avoid the situation where the clients or his biases do not overshadow the intervention process. So always know that if you fail to activate these statements of ethical values in the course of your intervention, then the other professionals whose responsibility, we have various aspects of social work. While you're interested in social work with children, school social work, psychiatric social work, there are some persons who are interested in the committee aspects, those who are saddled with the responsibility of reviewing cases handled by professionals to identify or handle complaints from clients on the wrong conduct of professionals during the course of professional engagement. So always know, I used to tell my students that relating with the clients, just if there are cameras surrounding you. So do not say what you cannot defend tomorrow, or do not do what you cannot defend or stand on tomorrow. This is not to say you should practice with fear, but this is to encourage you to practice in the right way. Now, the code of ethics is a commitment which serves to bear witness to a promise as a profession to uphold the values and ethical obligation. So you see, these ethical principles or ethical code is a witness to you. So that tomorrow, if there is any complain, you can always fall back to the ethics and say, okay, fine, I did this because of this. And I followed the ethical code jealously. That alone is enough to save you from whatever problem or from whatever allegations that is before you. A code of ethics lays out clearly the profession's values and explain what they are in terms of what we ought to do in order to protect and promote the public good, and what we must avoid in order to prevent harm to the public. There are times where your decision, you need to make decisions to protect people from being harmed. The code of ethics will help us to justify that. For example, we said earlier that the fact that a particular client's problem is exposing hundreds and thousands of other people to danger does not mean you should go so tight to the client's problem. There's what we refer to as ethical dilemma, and to resolve this ethical dilemma, we need to leverage on a code of ethics, the principles of the profession to resolve this ethical dilemma in order to protect or prevent harm to the public. There are some decisions that are before your client. Let's say there are about 3 decisions or multiple decisions before your client that are totally right. Yes, you should be able to settle for the one with the least harm. So even though they are totally right, you begin to ask yourself, which of these decisions or opinion has the less harm or exposure to harm than the other? Then you justify reasons why you're settling for that. The code of ethics cannot guarantee ethical behavior. So the fact that we have ethical code of conduct does not mean automatically as social workers we are well behaved. No. Earlier on, we defined code of ethics as a combination of a professional set standards and the professional behavior. So you as an individual, you're a human. You need to operate with the ethical conduct, ethical code as an individual. So how do you make use of it and keeping your biases in check? So the fact that we have ethical behavior does not mean automatically as a social worker you're well behaved. No, there's what we refer to as self-awareness in social work. You have to understand yourself, you need to know yourself, and you need to understand the profession. Then mirror yourself in the light of the profession to be able to fit in to the profession. It's just like nurses. Someone who said, okay, fine, I want to do nursing. Of course, or someone who said, I want to be a medical doctor. Sometimes we see people make, or young ones make these statements passively, probably because they watch movies and they like the way doctors operate, or because of the public opinion as to how they rate medical doctors and the rest. They just fall into that and begin to feel, okay, fine, because everyone likes doctor, I also want to be a doctor, or my mommy wants me to be a doctor, without necessarily understanding, how do I react when I see blood? Okay, what comes with being a doctor? Can I do this? Can I do that? Do I have the capacity to stand long hours? We stand long hours reading and lectures. And that is why you see, with all due respect to distinguished medical professionals, we see a lot of medical doctors who are into drug and substance use today. And you begin to trace as social workers who have had engagement with them, we notice that this issue of experimenting with drugs is not something that started lately. Most of them started experimenting with drugs right from school because they needed drugs to stay awake, to read, to compete with their contemporaries. So gradually, they became drug addicts. And today it's difficult for them to break free. And you begin to wonder, how would a medical doctor be a drug and substance user? That is because from the beginning, they never understood themselves. They were not aware of themselves to begin to address some of their behaviors or characters that are not in tune with the profession they are going into, to see if they are really fit in or they actually fit in to go on with that profession. It applies the same to social work. You need to be aware of yourself. You need to understand how you can fit in to becoming a social worker. That will help to put your biases in check. That will also help you to identify a particular area of specialty that will be suitable for you. That would also help you to know how to make good use of the ethical code. Because like we said, ethics do not guarantee ethical behavior. So it's your ability to make use of it. That is why sometimes you will see people, and he says he's a social worker. It's because person first is here to understand his or herself. Sometimes you talk to people because you feel, okay, you're right. But are you really right? Why do you think you're right and everybody around you is feeling you're not right? And as a normal human being, you're not going back to tell yourself, ask yourself, why are people saying I'm not right when I think I'm right? And that is enough reason to know that you're the problem. So ethical code can help us to address most of these things. And I used to explain it this way. Let's assume you're visiting a friend that needs, okay, ideally this your friend is not supposed to be at home in the afternoon, but you're surprised to meet him at home. And you say, what happened now? Why are you home? You say, I lost my machete and I don't have money to buy another machete. And because you have a spare cash and you want to surprise your friend, you say, oh, please excuse me, let me attend to something. You rush and go to the market, get a new machete, and you pay for it to be well sharpened. And after sharpening that machete, you now take it to your friend's house. And this time, you didn't even cover the machete. You're holding the machete firm, and you're now running towards your friend with a very serious facial expression. Now, how do you think your friend will react? If there is a stick or any weapon close by, your friend will use it to defend himself. True or false? Of course, he'll want to defend himself. And if there's a way to run, your friend will want to run. But that's not your intention. You just want to prank him, not so. Now, why am I saying this? Your intentions does not matter in professional relationship. What matters are your action. So even if you think, okay, fine, your intentions are good, that is your business. What matters is how you go about carrying out your intention. So you cannot say, okay, fine, these are my intention, you're doing this, and your action is doing the other thing. No. Your intentions must be in line with your actions. It's even better for your actions to be visibly noticed, and why your intentions are different. It's better. People want to see your action, and that is what matters, and that is what counts. So always have it at the back of your mind that ethical code do not guarantee good behaviors. So as a social worker, you need to ward off some of those repugnant practices, some of those attitudes that will make it difficult for you to work with people. So you need to work on yourself. That is why it is referred to as self-awareness, self-identity. A code of ethics cannot resolve all ethical issues or disputes or capture the richness and complexities involved in striving to make responsible choices within a moral community. So the fact that you always have the presence of code of ethics, that does not mean it would always resolve all ethical issues. No. There are some issues that you don't necessarily need to leverage on the code of ethics. You can rely on the culture of the people. That is why it's referred to as you being culturally competent, cultural humility. So there are some problems ethically, they are right, but culturally is wrong. For example, in the traditional African society, a man is not expected to sleep with a man. But then, as a code of ethics, people should be allowed to do what they feel is right for them. That does not mean as a social worker in a traditional African society you should begin to challenge and speak up for the right of people who are into same sex when we have a law that is outrightly against it. No. If you should speak up for them, then it should be at the level of policy making. Try to push for policies, try to inform laws that will protect their rights, that will allow them to express their sexuality freely. Not when they are being considered to be criminals for contravening the law. If not, you'll be considered or you'll be tagged an enabler. So where the code of ethics cannot address, we can leverage on the culture of the moral community. That is why it says a code of ethics do not resolve all ethical issues involved in trying to make a responsible decision within a moral community. A code of ethics sets forth values, ethical principles, and ethical standards to which professionals aspire and by which their actions are judged. So, by the time you're being judged, and it is clear that your intervention, your engagement with clients falls outside within the expounded boundaries of the code of ethics, then you find yourself to blame because you will be judged. If your name is, for example, Mr. John, you won't be judged as Mr. John. You'll be judged as a social worker, right? That gives you immunity. But then the immunity will fall out of place if, for example, it becomes clear that at some point you did not follow the principles of the profession. The question will now be, if we are judging you as a social worker and you did not follow the principles of the profession, that automatically makes you, or that automatically disqualifies you from becoming a social worker. That be an issue. And from that moment, you cease becoming a social worker. That will not justify them withdrawing your license. You see how it applies, right? And once that license is withdrawn, of course, other legal action can be taken, such as serving a jail term, paying a fine, and lots more. So social workers' ethical behavior should result from their personal commitment to engagement in ethical practice. So it's good and necessary for social workers to always engage in ethical behavior. That is where we will stop for today. When we meet next time in our next class, we will start our discussion from the need for ethical behavior in social work. We will now justify why social workers need to engage in ethical behavior in their course of engagement with clients. So at this point, I will now call on questions. Please entertain us with your questions. I have a question from the chats, and I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to react to it because one, it's obvious this participant did not attend the orientation yesterday. But please, this is an official meeting. It is totally out of place to attend a meeting of this nature, a professional one at that. We are talking about social work professionalism and ethical code of the profession. You are attending this kind of meeting without renaming your device to reflect your name. How do I identify you? We have Frida Saliu, but your device is saying is named Infinix X689. You're now sending your name for me to take down your name for attendance. You're stressing me. I can't do that. We said the instruction is rename your devices. You have the option of renaming your devices once you log in. As you just once once you type in the code, the link or the code to this meeting, inviting you to this meeting, before you finally log into this meeting, you have opportunity of inputting your name. Put it there and we'll see it. iPhone, you said please kindly mention the code of ethics social worker can be rely on or make reference to it. We will get there. In our next class, we might likely get there and we'll mention them. Please, let's entertain your questions, please. Any question? Okay, I can see the hand of Shitu Siliman. Please unmute yourself and speak. Shitu Suleiman, unmute yourself and speak.
Good. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Hello, sir.
I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
My okay. My question is that as a social worker, for example, there was an incident that happened in my area where a pedophile was caught with a girl child of 9 years old. So we took the person to police, but on our way going to the police station, or after we reached the police station, they asked me about who I am. Are you a social worker? I said yes. I replied to them, yes, that I am a social worker, but I have no license to present that will justify me of being a social worker. So, for example, now after this program, is there a license or an identification card that will be issued to us to be presenting it to law enforcement officers or agencies? I don't know whether you are getting me, sir.
Yes, of course. You have a license, right? One of the
Okay.
things you'll be getting at the end of this exercise would be a license that is renewable annually, right? So with that
Oh,
license, you can register an NGO or an agency to render services directly. Okay, you can register it.
yes, sir.
Whenever cases like that comes up, you can go maybe involve the police and stand in as will I say the social worker and the agency that is interested in handling that matter. Okay, so in that case, if
Yes.
you handle that matter, because you're not a social worker, probably the police now will now want to handle it themselves or involve a licensed practitioner. So until then, until you get your own license to practice and your own agency, I would suggest that next time you involve an NGO, an agency that is that has the mandate of addressing issues like that. I know you're interested in that. You had interest in the case, no doubt, but you can still function with them in partnership, collaborating with them. That is why in social work there is room for collaboration. There's room for partnership.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
No.
Thank you.
Please, any other question? Any other question, please?
Hello, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, sir.
I
Sorry, sir. Please, sir. I will do that now because I missed that orientation yesterday due to the network, and I will do that immediately this lecture so that I can rename my phone. I'm very sorry, sir, for that because the thing applicable to me.
It's okay, no problem.
When someone want to build some operation center, maybe the person did judgment. Maybe what are the
Oh, can you adjust a bit? Your network is breaking. I can't hear you. Can you adjust your location a bit?
hearing me now, sir?
Okay, I think it's better. But you're muted. You're muted. Hello. Can't hear you again. Okay, while he's trying to resolve that, if there's any other person that wants to ask a question, please feel free to indicate. Mr. iPhone, tell us your name.
As
Oh, please, see what you do. We still cannot hear you. You're breaking back. Just type your question using the chat box, okay? Type it. I will read it. I will read it and I will address it. It's like Omolade wants to say something. Omolale or Omolade rather. Omolade wants to say something.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Please, I have an emergency to attend to. Can I leave the meeting, please?
You're free, please. You're free, please.
Thank you.
All right. In the absence of any further question, we're going to draw the curtain here. But I wish this our Mr. iPhone. Okay, we have some messages. All right, let me read it out. Let me read those messages out. All right, we have Awokuya Olasike, right? Olasile. Awokuya Olasile, Mr. Please, can we get a small note? Because network is poor and couldn't get all the information correctly. No problem. If you can hear me, Awokuya, if you can hear me, I promise sending the material and I will do that. Just remind me much later, okay? Then iPhone, sorry, sir. It's applicable to me also, and I rename it now. Thank you.
thank you,
Okay,
sir.
Kazim, Lajide, okay. All right, Shitu, Suleiman, please, I have an emergency. Okay, please, you're free to leave. We have Ajisekola, Lizzie, please, sir, in case of crisis emergency, where there is threat to life, I learned that social worker is the professional next of kin till the arrival of the next of kin. My question is, do we have to wait? Do we have to wait? I'm coming, please. I'm coming, please. All right, so my question is, do we have to wait for the law agency in that situation? It depends on the kind of emergency. You don't need to take some kind of decisions for unless the only way this can apply to a social worker is in a situation where you have been working with these clients for a very long time. Like this client is your client. Fine. You can do that. There are justifiable grounds for you to do that. And before you should do that, that means the client in question has already consented that, okay, in case of any emergency, this social worker should stand in for me. I don't know if that is clear. Lizzie, if you can hear me, I'm addressing your question. I said for this to stand or for this to work, that means this particular client that is having this emergency crisis has been your client over the years, and there is a consent that this client had already signed, stating that in case of any emergency, you, that is her social work, his or her social worker, should stand in for him or her. That can work. I hope that is clear. All right. So, Dare, good morning, sir. Thank you for your time this morning. Just wanted to ask if we can get a recording or run through of the orientation done yesterday. Okay. Ideally, I think every session is supposed to be recorded, and the ICT department will post it on the platform later. So you have access to the recorded versions of all the lectures. Don't worry. That has been sorted out, right? What are the requirements to bill a client out? This is being asked by iPhone. I don't know who you want to bill out and what requirement. It depends on the case, right? Every case is unique. So we cannot sit down and begin to spell out the various requirements to bill a client out. And I don't know, one of your responsibility as a social worker is not even to bill a client. So I don't know why you're asking this question. Yeah, a social worker does not have the responsibility to. The most important thing is to help clients to be rehabilitated and be reintegrated back into the society. Your interest is not to bill. If it gets to the point where there is need to bill, the social worker needs to involve a legal officer. Okay? You're a social worker, you're not a legal officer. Okay? Now, you said, for example, court or correctional service. Your questions are disjointed. I don't understand your question, please. From Joy Ocean Gabriel. I have a BSW in social work, currently running my master's in social work, but I want to be involved in the upcoming practicum. Beautiful. Probably your interest or the reason you want to do your fieldwork practicum is because you want to increase your number of hours in the field. There's no problem. But my concern is you're doing your master's. It's possible you're also expected to be doing your field work. So how do you balance it? How do you balance it? If you're doing field work where you're doing your master's, you're also doing field work here, won't it clash? Or won't you end up using your field work hours from your master's to report to us? That would be wrong, okay? And another thing is, just in case you're looking at acquiring a lot of hours because some of you want to japa, that is the idea. You want to japa. These people too, they are also very smart. If you say you did 300 hours in a space of 3 months between August and September 2026 with so and so school when you're doing your masters, and now you're with C-ISOWN, you're also saying you did 300 hours within the space of June and August. There's a clash there. How were you able to do 300 hours in two different institutions within the same period of time? So this is not me discouraging you, but I'm just trying to help you weigh your options. And this is not me making a decision for you. It is a good idea, but then you should factor this in. Make sure you're done with your field work with your masters, and make sure you're not doing it concurrently because it will clash. The time and the date will always be captured, and it will raise a question as to how you were able to do this at the. We also have a question from Adam Abdul. We should be giving the presentation because the network, I said this earlier, that will be addressed. Or you get all the course materials on the platform. So do well to download and read. I'm done with my field work. Just defended my last 3 months. Okay, awaiting my result. Okay, beautiful. You can go ahead and register. So when others are registering for field work, you can as well register. Okay, there is no big deal. It's still fine. All right. I appreciate your time. I think someone hand is up. Pastor John Paul Oluwatosin. Okay, please, let's hear from Pastor John Paul.
Thank you, sir. God, thank you so much, sir. Your lectures has been very impactful. Yeah, I have a question. The question is that if you are working with you have a client that is having court issues, having a court case, so to say, and probably um you're also working with a legal resources, probably a chamber or so. So how do you present your stuff in courts? Do you go to court as a prosecutor? Do you go to the court behind the legal resources you're working with? How do you come in, please? How do you come in to represent your client in the courts, especially when it's not a testimony you are doing for your clients?
Beautiful. Nice
Thank you,
question.
sir.
You see, even when you're in private practice, it's just like a law. A lawyer cannot practice as an individual. He must still be traced to a chamber. He must still register a chamber. The same thing applies to a social worker. You cannot operate as an individual. A social worker operates from, it should always be traced to an agency. You cannot be traced to you as an individual. So if you say you're a social worker, from which agency? It's just like you say you're a lawyer. From which law firm? I don't know if you get the point. And now, every social work agency should have a law firm. Should have a lawyer. So let's say your agency is okay, you have a John Paul agency for the physically challenged, or John Paul's rehabilitation agency or center where you rehabilitate discharged inmates from correctional centers, and you have a particular client that you want to help resolve their matters in court. You pass through the lawyer that is attached to that your agency. He is the one to serve as the prosecutor. And please, I want us to up our game, especially in Nigeria. There are a lot of vacuum. As a social worker, you shouldn't be unemployed. You shouldn't be unemployed. Last 2 weeks, I was in court, and I noticed the judge of that court knows a lot about social work. You know, sad to say, in Nigerian environment, they don't value in fact, they don't even know the place of social work. But that judge, I can tell you, the judge knows the place of social work. In fact, there was this particular matter, the judge was busy asking, who is the assessor of this case? There should be a social worker to assess this case. So without a social worker, we can't proceed with this case. Another matter came up about a bail. Someone that was accused of a rape was applying for a bail. And the person that the prison warder, the prison official that brought the inmate, the client to the court, was busy saying that this client is not feeling well. The inmate is not feeling well. And the judge was asking him, are you a medical doctor? Are you a social worker? Who confirmed that this person is not feeling well? Who should confirm that this person is actually right for this person to be discharged? So you see that the social worker or the judge needed the social worker to help him make an informed decision. So how do I mean? Social workers can also help to serve as mediators, help to relieve the stress of the court, take up matters from the court and try to mediate, settle these cases and bring back the report to the court for the court to adopt as a judgment. Okay, so you're not expected to take up matters as a prosecutor unless maybe you're a lawyer and also a social worker. Beautiful. But also know that even though you're a lawyer and you're a social worker, you will not you can't take the matter up as an individual. It's just like because you're a lawyer, you want to take up your own matter. It's wrong. You can't take up your own matter as a lawyer. Another lawyer needs to represent you. So in the same light, even when you're a lawyer and a social worker, you still need a lawyer from the firm. In fact, if you're a lawyer and a social worker, you're not presenting that case as your own case. You're coming in that case as a lawyer from a particular firm. So going forward, in addressing your question, you should always identify a lawyer that is attached to the firm you're working with. Furnish the lawyer of what you want and how you want the matter to go. And the result of your engagement with that client, the lawyer will now follow through your expectation. I hope that addresses your question. Hello, it's Pastor John Paul. I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Yes, very well, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Sorry, I saw the hand of, but that hand has dropped. I don't know why. All right. Omolade is asking, sir, please, how can we maintain confidentiality with a client shares information that could potentially put another person at risk? Okay, that will be addressed. Don't worry. That will be addressed. An intelligent judge who is thorough and professional. I don't know what. Okay. What is okay? Okay. All right. So that is it. Sir, are you saying every social worker must be attached to an agency? That is what I'm saying. That is what we are saying. Not like you must be attached to an agency. I used a very perfect example. This is coming from Joy Gabriel, right? I used a very perfect example. There is every lawyer you see is a lawyer, but the lawyer cannot go to a court without coming from a chambers. That lawyer must be traced to a particular law firm. It's the same with the social worker. As a social worker, you must come from an agency. You cannot say, oh, I am a social worker. We are not hooligans. We are not touts. Okay? We don't go about roaming the streets. You should be traced to somewhere. You must be operating. Even fine, in some cases, you own that agency. Not that agency must be owned by someone else. That agency might be your own. The agency might even be bearing your name. But the question is, you're a social worker. Which agency are you working with? Where are you working? You cannot say, okay, fine, I'm a social worker. That ends it, or no. I'm a social worker. I'm specialized in this area of social work. I am attached to so and so agency. That makes it more professional. Remember, we talked about professionalism. What makes the profession a profession? What makes the practitioners of that profession professionals? So you cannot say you're a professional when you're working without being attached to an agency. That doesn't make it professional. So you're writing, let's say you're writing maybe to the commissioner of police to bring the commissioner of police attention to a particular matter. What letterhead would you be using? You understand? What letterhead would you be using? These are legal. That is why I keep saying that if you take the law out of social work, you take culture out of social work, you make it naked. Even though the agency belongs to you, it's just like the law firm we are talking about. Most of the law firms belongs to those lawyers themselves. If they ask, okay, you're a lawyer, which law firm? I am lawyer Mbina. I'm barrister Mbina. Oh, you're barrister Mbina. Which law firm are you attached to? Mbina law firm. So I am operating as a lawyer, but I'm not standing as an individual lawyer. I'm coming as a firm. That is why even in court, when they are introducing themselves, they will introduce themselves and say, okay, fine, I'm coming from so and so law firm. Nobody comes from the house to present a case. So it applies to social work too. That gives it a legal backing, and that gives it a flavor that it makes it more appealing and more responsible and professional. So please practice professionally. Okay? Every social worker ideally should be coming from a firm. Should be coming from a firm. And you must not necessarily be employed by that firm. You could be doing a pro bono service, that is voluntary service, free services for that particular agency, but you're working for them. So like they're saying, this social worker, someone came here and said he's a social worker, he wants to build a particular client, he's trying to, they should trace you. And they are tracing you, they should not trace you to your house. Once you just say, I'm a social worker, I'm not attached to any firm, they won't take you seriously. They won't take you seriously. So your license, in the end, your license would enable you to get employment, to be attached to a firm or an agency, or your license can also help you to register your own agency. I hope that addresses the question of Joy Ocean. Hello, Joy Ocean. Does that address your question? Okay. Omolade said, how can we maintain confidentiality when a client, please, that will be addressed, okay? The issue of confidentiality and other principles of social work will be properly addressed in our lectures going forward, okay? The network is poor, sir. Okay. I hope that means you didn't hear me clearly. Oh, that's so bad. I just wish a colleague can reach out to you. I just wish a colleague can reach out to you.
I didn't hear at all.
Is it Joy that is speaking? Is that
Yes, sir.
Joy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I was saying that
It's breaking,
yes.
seriously.
Okay. If you can manage to hear me now, to cut it short, I was saying that yes, social workers should be attached to a firm. Even though you're not working for that firm, even if you're doing the free or pro bono services for that firm, you should be traced to a firm. And even if that firm belongs to you understand, it's not ideal for a social worker to be practicing as an individual. No, it's not professional at all. Okay? So every social worker should be attached to a firm. So if you have a case you want to take up, like that our friend, that guy that raised up an issue earlier that said he took someone to the hospital to the police station, and he was asked if he's a social worker, and he said yes. So ideally, the next time going forward, if you have a matter like that, since you're not attached to a firm, you should identify with an agency, then take that person to the police station through that agency. Then you can now make your case. Okay? So that means as a social worker, you, even when you're not registered to a firm or attached or employed with any firm, you should look for a firm and register or volunteer with them. Yes, just volunteer with them so that at any time you have a case, you can handle that case through that agency. It's just like a lawyer. Every lawyer that wants to practice, that wants to appear in a court, must come through a firm. Someone cannot meet you in your house because you're a lawyer, a barrister, gives you matter, and you just decide to go to the court and present your case. The judge will not listen to you. They won't even admit it. So to make you serious, you need to be attached to a firm. And if you feel you don't want to be attached to a firm, register your own firm, your own agency. I hope that addresses all the questions asked. In the absence of any further question, I still see some hand. Chinyere Omokintosh, Chinyere Macintosh, right? Please unmute and speak. And that will be the last questions I would entertain for today's lecture. Chinyere Macintosh. Please, you're muted. Unmute yourself and speak. Oh, Chinyere, can you hear me? Oh, Unfortunately, she is not here to speak up. In the absence of any further question, take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Sorry, class. Are we expected to have another class immediately? I see the timetable. They're supposed to be
Yes.
11 to.
No, it's
So
Yes, I
12.
think today is. Just
It's-
check the link. Just check the platform. There is a link for another.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to understand this. The other classes for today, are we meant to attend all of them?
Yes, now
Yes.
it's
Oh,
not
wow.
a
Check the. Okay,
The
no,
next-
sorry. Like today is 8, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have the next lecture. The next class is for 3 p.m.
3 p.m. No, that is the third class.
The
Yeah,
next
that is.
class is the next class is by 12 p.m.
Yeah, you are right.
12 to 2 p.m. And then the last
Yes, I've
class
seen
is by 2 to 4.
Okay, I've seen it. I've seen it 12 p.m. Yeah, at 12 p.m. Yeah, your next class is by 12 p.m. and that will be SWPCE 604, Competencies and Quality Service Delivery. So you are expected to attend all, please.
Hello, class. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good
Can
morning.
someone help me reshare the timetable? I just joined the group this morning.
Check it on the platform. You see it there.